Liesbeth, did you ask me to teach this class?
Oh my God, I think
it was like 6 months ago.
It might have been 6 months ago.
Okay, so 6 months ago, Liesbeth asked me to teach a cooking class for the guild, the cooking guild, on German food. And of course, I was so upset that she gave me Germany. And then I asked her, well, there's so much stuff in German cooking, what should I teach about? And she said, well, you can pick whatever you want. And I said, that was really dumb. I'm going to do Landsknecht stuff.
I still think I'm smart.
So no, she's super smart because she knew then I would pick something I love, and now I can talk about something that I love so much. And so in the year 1487, Maximilian I, the Holy Roman Emperor, formed the Landsknechts. And they were a group of mercenaries. Basically, they would fight for whoever paid them the highest. And a lot of times, the separate fan lines, or units, were paid by one side and the other side. So there'd be 4 fan lines on this side of the battle and 8 fan lines on this side of the battle, and the Landsknecht would be fighting each other. And pretty much every big battle in the 16th century involved Landsknechts, on one side or the other, or both. The cool thing about the Landsknecht were that they really lived life as a family. So your unit in your fighting unit would almost become what we in the SCA would consider a household. You would look at those people as your family. They were brothers in arms, they really protected each other, and usually they would have their wives and their children traveling with them. So they really were a big family camp, like Penzig. They'd go and they'd set everything up, and they'd build their fireplaces, and they'd move their, it was called the Tross, T-R-O-S-S. It's all the piles of stuff that follows an army. And they would set up their new house in the new place, they would have a battle, they'd see if they could get in on an extra one, maybe they could make some money without moving, and then whoever paid them next, they'd pack everything up and they'd move it to the next place and set up a camp again. So you'd have these units going and setting up a camp, and other units coming in because the battle's going to be starting in the next couple days, setting up, and women would have different things. They had domesticated animals, but they also traded for wild game, for things that perhaps weren't easy to get on the road or to collect wildly. If one unit had been through a town and another unit had just killed a bunch of pheasant, then they could trade and get town stuff for their pheasant and get some pheasant for their town stuff. So there was a lot of back and forth. And a lot of this cooking is cooking with what you've got in your pantry. It wasn't the kind of situation where you could say, oh, I could really use some leeks. I think I'll run to town and get some leeks. No, that's not happening. If you couldn't trade the housewives in the next unit over for some leeks, then go find some wild onions, or problem solve and pick something else. Use some garlic, it'll be fine. So in some of these recipes, I did some, well, I didn't have this, so I used this instead. And I will be sure to mention that every time when we get there. In devising my meal, there's no Landsknecht cookbooks, because they were too busy marching and killing people and they had other things to do. But there are some really great German 16th century cookbooks, and I have put several links in the resources page for you guys to go and look at. So if you would like, that's on the 6th page of the handout. If you guys would like to look at other recipes that perhaps I didn't redact and learn something else, I put lots of recipes on here, as well as the link to the Sabine Felicitas cookbook, which is the main one I used here. The other one that I used a lot was Ein New Cookbook by Marx Rumpold. And the nice thing is that both of those have already been translated into English for you. So if you click on these top 2 links, you're going to be able to get Sabine Felicitas and the new cookbook in English. So it makes your life much easier because it's 16th century German, so it's closer to the way that modern German is anyways, but it's also giving you English that's closer to the English we speak now. So the redactions themselves are much less confusing as opposed to like reading Chaucerian English. That's almost like a whole other language. You gotta learn new words and figure out what they're talking about. This is much more straightforward. The reason why I really like Sabina Felicitas is because she's a housewife. She's cooking for her family. She's writing down recipes that she's getting from neighbors, that she's getting from chefs who've traveled through town. If there's somewhere she very specifically says, this is from Judge so-and-so, and he gave me an excellent recipe for God, or whatever. So it's really interesting, and it's a cool look into her life. So I thought that since she's not cooking for court, she's not cooking fine feasts, she's cooking everyday, let's feed my family food. And I think that that's going to be closest to what the Landsknecht are going to be cooking. Now, of course, they're dealing with, you're outside. It's Pensick cooking all the time. You don't have a nice kitchen that you're cooking in with servants that you're hiring. I'm doing the work. So it's much more straightforward fare because you don't have 500 people working on one dish. As I said in here, it's eaten by hard-working folk because you need to fill up and you need to get energy and you need to get back to work. The other thing that's really important is there's no refrigeration, and these guys didn't even have a cold storeroom like you would in a castle where you could have a colder room where you would store things. They were outside at the mercy of the elements, so whatever was going on, that's what they had to deal with. And so it was really important that they had food that could be stored and kept for long periods of time. So you will see that dried items, pickled items, and smoked items are all really popular in both the Sabina Felicitas cookbook and I would assume be necessary to a life on the go. Is you'd have a lot of pickled meats that then you could reuse, and dried lentils and beans and peas, like the split pea soup. So that kind of stuff is all coming into play. One of the things that was important to me was not only being able to cook this in my modern kitchen, but to take any of these recipes and take them to Pensick or to a camping event like Pox and cook them for my friends. So I wanted to know what kind of tools a Landsknecht woman would have at her disposal. So I looked at, I included the very best woodcut that I found on the front of the handout here. But there's several other camp woodcuts that you can find. There's even women, I have a backpack basket that I wear everywhere, and there's women with long spoons sticking out of the back of it, fry pans hanging off the baskets. Always have your spoon ready to go because you never know. It also works as a weapon, I can attest. So here's what I found, and this is also based off of extant items, 16th century extant items that they have in various museums around the world. Spoons and ladles of several sizes in wood and metal. Metal pots and pans of various sizes for cooking over the coals. And they would have stands that you would put the pans on, or grates that you could put the pans on. Large metal and ceramic cauldrons for stewing and boiling. And you can see them right here in the woodcut. There's two big cauldrons that she's got on this tripod. And I mean, based on, if you look at the size of the lady and the size of those cauldrons, she could almost crawl in that sucker. They're big. But you're literally cooking for an army. I mean, you're cooking a lot of food. Forget you guys, you're nothing. You're cooking for a lot of people. Small ceramics for baking and roasting. And I actually brought, there's two words there, a pipkin and a piggy pot. I'm coming back here, I'm coming back.
Come back.
So I actually brought, this is my piggy pot, and this is my pipkin. And Mistress Honora made both of these for me. I make her Landsknecht garden, she makes me pottery, and we trade. It's a very medieval arrangement. So if anybody would like to come up and look at them, the insides are glazed so that nothing sticks. But the bottom is not, because it actually makes the heat spread more evenly. So you get your coals, you spread them out, and you stick your little pipkin right in there, and then you can put whatever it is that you want to bake in here. Put the top on, and you put some coals on the top, and you've got heat coming from the top and the bottom, and it's going to cook whatever you got going on in there. Same thing with this guy. You can see he's glazed on the inside. Dark green there. So nothing sticks. He's super easy to clean up. Same thing with the lid. And you put that on, and you cover him with coals, and he will do the same thing. In fact, you can put a small roaster chicken in this guy with some onions and apples. And nom, 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 nom. So if anybody wants to come up and look at these after class, they'll be here. You can come and look at them. She also made this picture for me, which goes with my set. I told her I wanted it to look like stuff I had picked up on, like, tour. You know what I mean? As the army was moving through places, I want all different stuff. So none of it matches. It's awesome. I love it. So the other thing was several different ways to build a tripod or a stand for your different pots and pans and big cauldrons. Sometimes, like this one, it's just hewn trees. Sometimes it's metal. Sometimes it's got hooks on it that you can spit multiple chickens or capons or ducks or goose or whatever it is you're cooking that day. So there's a lot of variety and there's a lot of options, which I like. I'm an options girl. The other thing that was important and interesting to me, so you're stuck listening to me talk about it, is what foods were commonly used in 16th century Germany. Just because it's in a 14th century French cookbook doesn't mean that it was popular in Germany in the 16th century. So, what I did for you, I'm sorry and you're welcome, was I went through 5 cookbooks and I pulled out the most commonly used ingredients and I put them in a list here for you. So, when you go and you want to do the cast iron chef competition, and you get all sorts of random weird ingredients, this will give you a good idea of, is a German cookbook a good place to look? What ingredients did I get? And should I pull out my Sabine Velserin? My answer is always yes. You should, because it's delicious. But, so we already talked about the importance of dried items. When you're on the road, you throw them in bags, you carry them from place to place. So beans, lentils, peas, rice. And I utilize the green split peas, and they're really easy because you basically boil the bejesus out of them, smash them down, and they're delicious, and they're easy, and you can make pounds and pounds and pounds of soup, and it's filling, which is very important when you're feeding soldiers. Game meat, so this is stuff that when you're marching from place to place, and the guys might shoot some game along the way, rabbit, boar, deer, bear, and small birds. Small birds was interesting to me because I wanted to find out what's the difference between what are domesticated birds at this point in time and what are wild game birds. So then I went to look up what were the domesticated or kept birds at this point, fowl. So for poultry choices that were domesticated, we have squab, goose, chicken, peafowl, duck, and the eggs of all of those. Interestingly, there was random tangent because this is interesting to me. There was a guy who did research, and I actually included the PDF of his research in my resources page. That's how interesting I found this. And this goes back into the 8th century, and then he did the Middle Ages, and then he did the 16th century, and he's comparing goose and duck and the use thereof. And here's how he did it, is he went and he found feathers and bones in piles of garbage in different towns that he lists, and you can see that the goose is much more prized. The duck was kind of like, leave it wild, it's annoying and dirty. And it was thought much more of as a pest. In fact, they would chase it off because it would be in their drinking water. The ducks are dirty. Sorry, Desi. They leave a lot of feces pigs, they leave a lot of dirt, they leave a lot of feathers, they get in fights, and it's a big mess. Goose are easy because they're kind of dumb, and they would stick their feet in tar and walk them to market so you could sell live goose, and it was super easy, and you'd have goose girls, and they just whack the geese into town, and you could sell off a whole flock of geese and make a lot of money. And that's really, that's the impetus for domesticating something, is it's dumb and you can make money off of it. That's important. So the other interesting thing is the squab is a, I didn't know what a squab was. I was like, I'd heard of it in recipes and stuff, but I'm like, a squab, okay. It's a dove, and they would keep dove coats. And they were also kind of dumb and easy to kill. And here's the really interesting thing about doves, is they would have these dove coats outside the big houses in towns. And when extra people showed up and you needed a couple extra places at dinner, you'd go and get a couple squab. And they'd strangle them right then, roast them up quick, throw some squab on the table, and no one needs to know that you didn't have enough food. It was like ramen. Do you know what I mean? We can flesh this out. Add another pack of ramen. It'll be fine. So, I know. Okay, so that was very interesting to me. Other kept animals: pigs, cows, sheep. Of course, all of those are very important. Not so much with the goats in Germany. Dairy, very important to me. Milk, cream, butter, cheese, and they had hard cheese and soft cheese. So like farmer's cheese. Fresh cheese is referred to in several of the recipes, but then they also say like great hard cheese in some of the recipes. So there's both going on. I'm very happy. I like cheese. Fish, not my thing, but you have lots of choices if you like fish. There is cod, crayfish, pike, carp, trout, bream, eel, oysters, and shrimp. And there's recipes where they're put in together, like stew, and then there's recipes where you're frying them and putting them in a pastry shell, bless you. With different sauces, and they have, here is a good sauce for trout, and here is a good sauce for crayfish, that kind of thing. So she's very helpful and straightforward, bless you. Fruit, also good, because you can, there were wild trees, so the Landsknecht could collect it. You know, you go across some apples, and take them with you, and everyone's getting apple pie tonight. So apple, pear, cherry, all of those. Of course, you can get, just collect. Grapes, you're probably stealing from someone's vineyard. And then raisins, so dried variant thereof. Currants, quince, plum, fig, lemon, limes, oranges, pomegranates. Lemons, limes, oranges, pomegranates, that's going to be a town thing that you're going to have to trade for. That's like, we just won the war and I stole a lot of stuff off of the dead people, so we can trade in for some fancy stuff from far away. Yes, it's very exciting. That's a good night. Pomegranates. Vegetables: onions, leeks, spinach, chard, peas, parsley, mushroom, head lettuce, carrots, parsnips, turnips, cucumbers, and cabbage. Mushrooms, parsley, chard, spinach, onion, leek, all carrots, usually, sometimes turnips or parsnips. You can find wild. So you got to know what you're looking for, but these are women who knew what they're looking for. Head lettuce is interesting. Head lettuce, parsley, and spinach. There are references to salads, and they would actually, there's like chicken that you, like flake chicken that you serve on a salad, flake fish that you serve on a salad. Sounds like a fancy restaurant to me today, so things haven't changed that much. Nuts. There's of course almonds and almond milk. That's in a bajillion, 8 million recipes in every country, because it's them trying to get bajillion and 8. That's technical. That's them trying to get around Lent. You can't have milk. Yeah. You can't have milk, but you can smash up some almonds and take the juice out of that and pretend it's milk. And the nice thing is because it's a nut, it will thicken, sort of like milk, but it has its own distinct flavor that you gotta get used to. Walnuts and hazelnuts are two that I use because they are referenced the most, But there is a Good Cookery website is excellent. They are also in my resources. They have a whole listing of nuts, what countries they were most popular in, and what time periods. So you can go on there and say you're making a French recipe and it calls for nuts. A lot of these recipes won't tell you what specific nut to use, so you can go and use that resource to find what nut would be the appropriate nut to use. Useful to me, I thought. Bread. Okay, so Germans really like bread. There's a lot of bread. Again, I am totally okay with this. There's a reason. I knew there was a reason why I was like, yes, there will be Landsknecht, because I like all the food. And the clothes, and the killing people, and it's really fun. Okay. So, breads and buns. There's rye loaf, several references to rye loaf that then they would cut up or grate up, and you put it into lots of recipes as a thickener. Same thing with semmel. That's a little round bun, sort of like a Kaiser roll, except it wouldn't be as white because they didn't have the kind of white flour that we have now. But again, they would grate those up, let them get hard, grate them up, and you'd use them as a thickener in soups and stews and all sorts of stuff. Brown bread, that's mostly for the lower class, but I am, so yay, brown bread. Lebkuchen, which is what I use to thicken the Sauerbraten gravy. It's sort of like gingerbread, if flavor profile-wise. Sackkuchlein, which are little pocket buns. Fässer, which are shaped like barrels. It literally means barrel. Stauben, which are funnel cakes. So that's a deep fat fried type item. And Krapfen, which are what we had today. And those are fritters, sort of. It's involved, and we'll get there when we get to the recipe. See what time it is. Spices. Oh my gosh, there's lots of choices for spices because we're in the 16th century, so trade's a little bit better. There's a lot of stuff that's now been grown locally. So salt and pepper, sugar, honey, cloves, nutmeg, mace, rose water is in several recipes. That's very popular. Cinnamon in ground and stick form, ginger, saffron, anise, juniper berries, mustard, elderflower, corn flours. That's when you want to turn things blue. There's several recipes where you use corn flour and you smash them up in your mortar and pestle, and then you can turn your sauce for your chicken blue. And they had like a rainbow chicken thing. It was very cool. Rosemary, marjoram, lavender, mint, cardamom, tansy, and roses. Tansy and rosy will both be put in a salad.
What is tansy?
It's a flower.
Oh, they just see the flower?
Just the flower part.
It's fun, we could grow it.
I think you just got a new project. Wine, beer, hyssop, verjuice, and vinegar are all very popular liquids that you would put into recipes. Water is still not a thing, guys. Pickles, they would pickle fruit, vegetables, and meat. Pickle anything, put it in a jar, take it with you, it's great. You ever heard of jugged hare? Literally take the
jugged hare is halibut.
Put it in a thing with vinegar, you have pickled stuff. It's awesome. Pasties or tarts. So I like dough and pie and stuff. So I like putting things in pasties, and they would do that because it helps keep it fresh, and it's like a little pocket meal, so you can take it with you if you've got to go dig a ditch or something. And they would put fruit, vegetables, or meat fillings, and they're easy to pack and carry. So pea soup's really straightforward. Literally pea soup with small chopped onions that have been sauteed. Add pepper and yellow, which is referring to saffron, so it is also good. It's very straightforward. And I put my redaction in there with the measurements because for most people trying to cook medieval recipes, the weirdest part is not having any measurements. So these are the measurements I used to make the soup you ate tonight. I do find that this calls for 12 cups of vegetable broth, and that's what I put in originally to boil my peas. I do find that usually as I'm cooking it down, it starts to thicken, and I will add more broth to it to make it the consistency that I like. But as you can see, I like it pretty thick. But I did even have to add, I would say 3 cups of broth again to what's going on there. Any questions about the pea soup? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, to the Krapfen, which sounds like you're saying a bad word, but you're not. It's just German, and everything sounds like a bad word in German. You're laughing because it's true. So here's the translation. So you want to make fast-day Krapfen of nuts with whole kernels. Take as many apples thereunder and cut them diced as the kernel is, and roast them well with a little honey and mix with spices and put it on the loaf, which you do to make Krapfen, and let it cook and do not oversalt. So, let me share my wisdom with you. It's not wisdom, it's I screwed this up, and so here's what happened and here's how I fixed it. The first round of these, I followed the recipe as was written here, and let my dough rise. It rose to twice the time, and I had cooked my apples and my nuts and my honey and my cinnamon to beautifuliness. And let me just tell you, when you are cooking that, it smells like Greek fest. It's awesome. It's like loukoumades and baklava smushed together in one thing, and you just want to sit there over the pan going, Greek fest facial. Love it. Okay, so I'm super excited about Greek fest. So that's totally aside. I like Greek food too. Okay, anyway, so I took all my stuff and I put it on the dough because it says that you put it on the loaf, right? Yeah. And so I knead it all together like I would for like a raisin bread. Yeah. And then I'm ripping off pieces and I'm putting it in the oil, and all the apples are burning. And it doesn't matter how much you turn that oil down, because as soon as you hit that threshold where the apples stop burning, it isn't hot enough to cook your dough. And then you just have like soggy oil bombs that you're taking out and throwing right in the garbage. So that's a waste of time. So here's how I did it today, and I think it was much more successful because they're not burnt piles of lump. What I did was I took rounds and I flattened them out, and then I spooned a bit of the filling in, wrapped it around, and deep fried that. So the apples and the nuts were completely protected by the dough. The dough fried itself up nicely, and the apples and nuts were already cooked in a pan before. They just kind of hang out while the dough cooks. That works much better. So I did make a note of that. I rewrote my directions to be more clear about that, because you need to protect your apples or they'll burn. Yeah.
So how was the apple raisin bread that you baked with the...
Yeah, my family ate it all. Yes, Lizzie.
What kind of oil do you use?
I used vegetable oil.
Oh.
Because I was concerned about allergies, and I didn't...
Is that what they use?
No, they would use like lard, like fat.
Oh.
Yeah. With the vegetarian concerns, because I knew that we'd have a couple vegetarians, and with nut allergy concerns, I didn't want to do peanut oil or anything like that. So I went with vegetable oil because I thought it would be the most friendly to everybody. And that's the anachronistic part. That's what you don't want to kill your friends. Or I don't. I don't. Are you raising your hand because you want to kill your friends?
No.
What are friends? I was going to say, what are friends for?
Yes, Desi.
How did you determine that it was fried instead of baked or sautéed or any other way of cooking?
That is an excellent question. So this recipe led me down a whole rabbit hole that was like all yesterday afternoon. I looked up what Krapfen was. What does the word mean? And have you guys ever heard the speech, the Kennedy speech? I'm Berliner, right? Okay, so he is a jelly donut. Krapfen modernly is also a jelly donut. It's just what part of Germany are you from? And they call them different things. Austria has a different name for a jelly donut. Berlin calls them Berliners. Krapfen is down in the south of Germany, which is awesome because that's where my persona is from. So Because it has come to be known as a donut, I thought that there was probably oil involved. So then I went and I was looking up what are the steps for a traditional Krapfen? Not the modern jelly donut, but what do German immigrant grandmas cook when they cook a Krapfen? So what they cook is more of like a fritter, and it's fried in oil. So then I went and I was looking up different Krapfen recipes, because there's a lot of these. Oh my gosh, there's one where you take soft cheese with herbs in it and you put it inside, and so it would be all melty and it would be like a modern mozzarella stick, and I'm super excited. And next feast I cook, we're all eating those. Because I'm super excited about those. So then I was reading, I'm sorry, tangents, food, me and tangents and food, and it's just a thing. So then I was reading other Krapfen recipes, and some of them say drop in oil. So, some of them say bake. As a Landsknecht who's cooking outside and doesn't have that nice medieval oven that they would have in like a house or a palace, I went for the drop them in oil, because me throwing a pan over the coals and getting some nice hot oil is way easier than me trying to put the coals in the cob and then pull everything out and put them in, and they're little balls, so as soon as you put them in the oven they're going flat on one side, you know what I mean? So anyways, that was my here's the German, here's the modern thing, and how do I get back to what the heck this is. So it played into both the persona and what has it come to be known? So there were many factors in my decision, but it's a good question. So you technically can bake these as well. It just didn't work well as a Landsknecht, so I went for the oil option.
Makes a lot of sense.
Also, the original recipe is a fast day Krapfen. And it says very specifically, so you want to make fast day Krapfen. So we're not fasting today, because it's a Thursday. Tomorrow you would have all had to fast, and I made you fast food. Aren't you glad that this class is not on Friday? So this class is not taking place on a fast day, so I used milk and eggs. And the non-fast day Krapfen recipes call for milk and eggs. So this is the fancier version that you were allowed. Yes.
Speaking of fast day, now, could you have fried it on a fast day? Being, animal
depends.
fat.
It depends. Not an animal fat, no, but you can use other oils.
All right.
So there are oils, like olive oil is an option, but then there are fast days where you can't, it's strict fast and you can't even use that. So butter's out, olive oil's out.
Maybe that's when the baking comes in.
That's when maybe that's when you have to bake them, because it's like really strict fast. She's a genius. Okay, so we talked about where the Krapfen went and came from modernly, and I put a note on that just so you didn't have to go down the rabbit hole that I went down. Are there any other questions on the Krapfen? Awesome. Okay. To make a good roast, well, this is my favorite recipe in all of Sabina Velserin because it's Sauerbraten.
It's ours too.
Yay. So you take veal or sirloin of beef and you lay it overnight in wine. That's pretty straightforward. And the longer you can leave it in the wine, the more the wine breaks down the fiber of your beef and the more succulent your end product will be. Of course, they didn't have refrigeration, but the wine is helping to keep the meat fresh. Afterwards, you stick it on a spit. So then you put it on the spit, you go to your fire, and you're gonna spit grill your meat. Then you put it in a pot. This is a multiple step recipe. Then you put it in a pot. Put good broth therein with onions, wine, spices, pepper, ginger, and cloves, and cook it. And The longer you can cook it, the more tender it goes. This is a low and slow process. You do not want to boil. You want to just let it fall apart. Do not oversalt it because the wine and the salt are not good friends, and you will end up with bitter instead of that nice sour flavor. So I know several people have been asking for my recipe for Sauerbraten, so here it is. I wrote it down for you. And the big thing is I add, I put it in the red wine, but then I also put it in vinegar. Modern Sauerbraten has vinegar added into it, and when it says put it in a good broth, to me, that is the flavor of a good broth. Is the apple cider vinegar with the wine and the onions and some sugar, and it all breaks down. So when it says put it in a good broth, that's my definition of a good broth. Is that. The other thing that is important is when you're cooking it, and I put directions in here for if you're cooking it on a spit, and I also put directions in here for if you're cooking it in your kitchen, so you're going to be searing it in a pan. Either way, you want to save your drippings. You're going to need the drippings. You put the drippings in when you cook it, and you can do it in a crock pot, you can do it in a pot, but you got to flip it every hour, or you can put it in a pot on the fire, but again, low and slow, not a high heat. So you add that to your marinade. You add your drippings to your marinade. All of that's going to go in there and cook that beef and break it down. And then you take your beef out and you shred it, but you keep all that stuff you cooked it in, and that's what you make the gravy out of. And you can use what you want. I like it thickened with Lebkuchen, so that's what I do. I have a little bit of a sweet palate, but you could thicken it with rye bread, or you could thicken it with semmel. Any of those are commonly used to thicken sauces in Savina.
What was the first one in English?
Lebkuchen.
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of like gingerbread.
Okay, so
Yeah.
in other words, just like a modern one uses
Ginger snaps. And this is, gingerbread, and it's I don't know, maybe it's because my palate's used to it, or
Oh, no, I like
like
that.
that sweet with the sour. To me, that is like, you add some coleslaw and some onions with this, and I am the happiest German ever. So that's Sauerbraten. Are there any questions on that? You guys you're not bringing the pain at all. This is very easy. Okay. You're not stressing me out enough. Roasted vegetables, love this. Fry roots and peel them and cut them and put them in a bowl and give them warm to the table, sprinkle with sugar, they are good too. It's literally chop up some vegetables, whatever you can find, whatever you like. I added leeks because I heart leeks. They are my favorite. So I just took root vegetables, added in the leek. You sprinkle it with sugar at the last 2 minutes of cooking so you get that caramelized glaze. Kind of like glazed carrots now when you add the honey to it, or jam. Sometimes people do that. Same idea, same flavor profile. Really good with Sauerbraten because it's that little bit of sweet with a little bit of sour. Any questions on that one? Pretty straightforward. So the strawberry tart. This was very exciting to me because this was a new thing, and I did not leave myself enough time, if it screwed up, to make you something else. I went to the liquor store. Oh, so this was another rabbit hole. Okay, so just call me Alice. So the first page here is really all how to make a good pastry crust. And the best thing I can tell you for the pastry crust is you want the sides twice as thick as the bottom. So it'll stand up. Otherwise it collapses like that. Sometimes. You never know I had a 5-year-old. That's the technical term, right? See, the other mom knows. Yeah, see, the moms are back there smiling, they know. Gotta have sound effects, it's just not right. So the actual tart itself, like the filling, the directions say, take the strawberries and lay them around on the top of your pastry shell together, as close together as possible. After that, sweeten them especially well. Next, let it bake a short while. Pour Malavosia over it and let it bake a while, then it is ready. I didn't know what Malavosia is, and it's not something that was translating. Like, I'm putting it in and I'm just getting Malavosia, and I'm like, well, that doesn't help. So it ends up, see, now you don't have to go figure out what Malavosia is. I figured my Alicey self has figured it out, sort of. So Malvasia is an ancient Mediterranean family of grape. And the wines that they produce can have a varying degree from very sweet to dry. You can get whites, you can get reds. So but this is a correct to my time period grape. So that was kind of exciting. And I was like, all right, well, what do they make wine-wise? Like, has this gone extinct, this grape? Does it, because that's an option. Does it still exist? Do they still cultivate it? And are there any wines made out of it? Interesting side note, I found out that Malvasia grapes are what they make Malmsey out of. And that's the stuff that they talk about in Shakespeare a lot. They drink, they're quaffing the Malmsey all the time. So this is the same thing. So I found out that the majority of these, they are still in existence, and the majority of the wines that they produce are light and sweet, and they're used in dessert wines. And port is also used with that. So Malvosia, the actual wine that I should be using, these grapes also make Malmsey and Madeira. Okay? Madeira is not all made from Malvosia grapes, but you can find Madeira and ports that use them. They're also used in a lot of dessert wines. So if you go and you search dessert wines, you can find Malvasia wines. And the interesting thing is that I didn't have enough time to do it, but this will be another project down the road. You can order these online. Our local liquor stores, none of them carry any of these. They tend towards the more expensive side, and it's kind of a specialty thing. So once they know you want it, they might keep it in stock if there's enough of us to go and ask for it. But you can order these online, and I put 3 websites where you can order them in my resources page if you're interested. They also carry, one of the websites also has several other medievally time period wines, which I thought might be interesting and helpful in your cooking as you go forward into other projects. So what I did was a Moscato, flavor profile wise, is very similar to the 16th century Malvasia. I love Moscato, so I was like, hey, I think they make a strawberry Moscato, and they totes do. So I went to the store and I picked up strawberry Moscato, and that's what the strawberry tart's made with. So here's what I did. I sliced up the strawberries, and I put the first layer down. One thing she doesn't say in here, and I would do next time, is I would par-bake my crust, because I don't like the bottom going mushy. I like the whole crust a little crunchier, a little more something to it. And it does make its own kind of nice sauce, and the sauce goes down and softens the bottom crust. So next time, I will par-bake my tart shells. Then start layering in the strawberries, and in between each layer of strawberries, I sprinkled sugar. Another layer of strawberries, sprinkled sugar. Another layer, so there's 4 layers of strawberries. At first, you put those in the oven, no wine yet, 15 minutes. Strawberries start to break down and you get strawberry syrup, which means that the pectin is being activated. Love is some pectin, that's what makes jelly, it thickens stuff. So then you start adding the wine 15 minutes into the baking, and the wine and the pectin create a syrup sauce, which starts to solidify everything. At this point, it's really hot. You cook it the rest of the way until the wine and the syrup or the wine and the pectin has made a syrupy base. Then you take them out. And I was concerned, I wasn't sure how much the strawberries would cook down. That's 4 layers of strawberries. I think I would have done 6. When you first make the pie, it would have stood up above it, but you know when you make an apple pie and the apples cook down, and it looks like it's a mound, and then you cook it, and it's flat. Do you know what I mean? Because the apples cook down. Strawberries do the same thing. So next time, I would actually mound it up a little bit, so as it cooked down, it would end up flat. But I did think that the Moscato worked well, so it's a good substitute. And that comes in lots of different flavors. And this tart is in Sabina Velsarin. It's exactly the same tart in pear, and there's a pear Moscato. Yeah, I know, right? And she has a recipe for a whipped sugared cream called Snow. I didn't bring it today because I knew it was going to be over 80 and anything I made at home would fall by the time I got here, and who wants some mushy, mashy whipped cream? But if you're doing it at home and you've got a refrigerator, making up some of that and serving on one of these fruit tarts when it's really hot would be really nice. I think that's it on the tart. Any questions on the tart?
You're using sugar here, and I'm assuming you're using your regular granulated white sugar, but
No, I don't.
Okay. Now, I guess that's the question. Were you using something closer to
I
what
use
they would
sugar in
like?
the raw for any of these recipes that call for sugar.
Okay.
Because it would have come, I assume I would have a cone of sugar in my supplies, and I would have to shave it off. So to my thinking, I wouldn't be able to get that finely ground modern sugar. So I don't use whole wheat, or I don't use white flour, and I don't use white sugar in anything that I do. It's totally up to you though. Like I said, all of these recipes, I tried to pick ones where you can do them in your modern kitchen, or you can do them at a perfectly period feast, cooked everything outside over the fire. So wherever you fall in the anachronistic field of things, they should still work. That was my goal, is that they will work whichever end of the spectrum you're in. I wanted them to be useful, basically. Any other questions about the tart or anything in general? So my genius plan was that I was going to make a Christmas fig pudding, because I love making puddings. I super love making puddings. You gotta boil them for 7 hours though, or steam them. You gotta steam them for 7 hours. And Fred was like, so Fred was like, no, yeah, you should make more dessert, right? Because Fred feeds my addiction. And my mom, Margaret, sits me down and she goes, why are you making 2 desserts? And you've got the Krapfen with the apples and the, would you stop? Just stop, because that's a mom's job. Hold you back, shut you down, it's too much, right? So I had already written up my redaction for how to, and directions and everything on how to do the fig pudding, which is the one that I put, it's not called Christmas pudding, it's just a fig pudding. But I pulled that out of Sabina Velsarin, so I've got the German in the translation and the redaction ready to go. So when I put this up on the website, I will also put up my redaction for the pudding. And the cool thing is once you have the directions on that pudding, there are literally 20 puddings in Sabina Velsarin. All sorts of fruit, all sorts of stuff in them. There's egg custard puddings, there's cheese puddings, there's like super fun pudding party, right? So once you know how to do it, the same directions hold true for all the other kinds of puddings. So you can go on there, pick the one you like. It's basically mix the stuff up. Wet ingredients, dry ingredients, put it in a bowl, steam the bejesus out of it, turn it out. Put a sprig of something in it, so it will be beautiful. You can also set them on fire. If you pour booze on them and set them on fire, you get a crispy crust on the outside. It's super delicious. Yeah, I like food. I should have called this class, I like food. I get the same look on my face when I'm talking about garb. It's kind of frightening. Are there any other questions? Yeah.
So what you're saying is you did not bring us some figgy pudding.
I did not bring you figgy pudding. No, my mom held me back. But she did say, she was like, you know, you could turn that into a whole nother class. You could have a pudding class. And I was like, sign me up.
Pudding party at Penson.
Ooh, that gives a whole new layer to pudding party at Penson. Right? Because there's like chocolate pudding out of a cup, like Jello, but then there's like medieval pudding that you set on fire with brandy.
Yes. And then it kind of comes like the creme brulee kind of top and that sounds really good. Challenge.
Now I wish I could.
We say now I'm gonna have the hummus and figgy pudding and stuff.
Well, we all know that
Stop.
winning.
Damn it. Bring it right here. Okay, is there any other questions? I'm singing. You know this is broken down if I sing.
No, but it's still on topic because it's figgy pudding.
It is.
Yeah.
So, okay, so for all of the viewers at home, I want to show you the food. So here's an up close and personal view of the food we ate today.
Ooh, can you point out which is which?
So this is the pasty, split pea soup, veggies. These are Krapfen, and then the strawberry tart. So there is your plate of Landsknecht deliciousness. Thanks, Honora, for the plate. All right.